You wake up another day, and the first sensation that washes over you isn't gratitude or excitement, but a silent weight in your chest, a question you can't quite articulate, but that throbs somewhere between your ribs and your throat. You look around your life and see the things you're supposed to be grateful for, the achievements you should be celebrating, the people you love who love you back, but something is missing, something essential you can't name. At night, when you finally lie down in bed after another day where everything went reasonably well, you find yourself staring at the ceiling with that unsettling feeling that you're wasting your existence, that you're living a life that isn't entirely your own, like an actor playing a part from a script someone else wrote. At social gatherings, you smile, you chat, you participate, but a part of you observes it all from the outside, wondering if this is really all there is, if this cycle of repeating days with minor variations is what it means to be alive. You've tried to fill this void with new things, different experiences, maybe even drastic changes, but that feeling of a lack of genuine purpose always returns, like a tide that recedes only to come back with even more force. And the worst part is, you look around and realize nobody seems to understand this anguish. Talking about it would earn you empty advice about gratitude or distraction, when what you're truly seeking is something far deeper, something that would make your entire existence make sense in a way nothing has so far. But there's a devastating yet liberating truth that one man discovered in the most unlikely of places, in the Nazi concentration camps, where everything that defines a life was stripped away from him. And this discovery has the power to completely transform how you live each of your remaining days. Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz not because he was physically stronger than others, not because he was luckier or had more resources, but because he grasped something about human nature that most people go their entire lives without realizing. This understanding not only kept him alive in impossible conditions, but became the foundation of a therapeutic approach that has helped thousands transform existential emptiness into a life brimming with authentic meaning. The truth Frankl discovered begins with a complete inversion of the question most of us ask. While we spend our lives asking what we want from life, what we expect to receive from it, what pleasures we seek to extract from it, Frankl realized this is precisely the wrong question, the question that condemns us to perpetual existential emptiness. Life isn't here to serve us, to deliver happiness or satisfaction like some vending machine where we insert our time and effort, expecting gratification in return. Instead, Frankl understood that life is constantly asking us questions, presenting us with situations that demand answers. These answers can't be given with words or abstract theories, but only through our concrete actions, the choices we make at every moment, the way we decide to position ourselves in the face of the circumstances we encounter. When he was in Auschwitz, starving, freezing in brutal cold, witnessing people die around him every day, life was posing a very clear, though terribly difficult question. How will you respond to this? Will you abandon your humanity, devolve into an animal fighting only for survival at any cost, or will you find a way to remain human, even when everything around you conspires to dehumanize you? And Frankl discovered that the prisoners who survived psychologically intact, who didn't completely crumble from the inside, even as their bodies were being destroyed, were those who found a meaning to live for, something waiting for them in the future, some unfinished project, someone who needed them, something only they could accomplish. He tells the story of a prisoner on the verge of complete breakdown until Frankl helped him realize his young son was waiting for him somewhere, depending on him to build a life after the war. That awareness of the responsibility he had toward the future was enough to keep him fighting when everything else had failed. This understanding completely revolutionizes our view of human suffering. For decades, psychology treated suffering as something to be eliminated, a disease to be cured, a problem to be solved through the pursuit of pleasure or the reduction of psychic tension. Freud believed humans were fundamentally driven by the pleasure principle, seeking gratification and avoiding pain. Adler argued that the primary motivation was the will to power, the pursuit of superiority and control. But Frankl realized that none of these explanations captured what truly moves human beings at their deepest core. He saw people in the camps who had every reason to seek pleasure and power give up on life entirely, while others who had no prospect of pleasure or power continued to fight fiercely for existence. The difference wasn't in the pursuit of feeling good or dominating circumstances, but in the presence or absence of a meaning to live for. And here's the most profound paradox Frankl discovered: the more you seek happiness directly, the more it eludes you. But when you find a deep meaning and dedicate yourself to fulfilling it, happiness arises as a side effect, a natural consequence of living a meaningful life. This is why so many people today, living in affluent societies where they have access to levels of comfort and pleasure no previous generation knew, still feel profoundly empty and hopeless. They are seeking happiness directly, trying to fill the internal void with pleasurable experiences, external achievements, social validation, when what they truly need is a meaning that makes all of it worthwhile, a purpose that organizes their lives around something greater than the mere pursuit of feeling good. And now I want to take a moment and really talk with you. I know many of you watching this video have felt that difference between having a comfortable life and having a meaningful life. So, tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced a time when everything was okay on the outside, but inside you felt like you were wasting your existence because there was no real purpose guiding your choices? If so, just write, "I felt that emptiness even when I had everything." You don't need to add anything else. Your experience matters, and know that by sharing it here, you're creating a space where others who carry this same silent anguish can finally realize they're not alone. It's often profoundly liberating just to see that others go through the exact same thing and are also searching for something deeper than superficial comfort. Let's build a community here of people brave enough to admit that life needs to mean something, not just function well. Frankl's fundamental discovery on how to find meaning unfolds in three main paths, and understanding these paths is essential to transforming your life from a sequence of empty days into a journey with authentic purpose. The first path is through the creation or accomplishment of something valuable in the world. Through the work you do, the projects you build, the contributions you offer. But it's crucial to understand here that Frankl isn't talking about external success or public recognition. He's talking about the internal experience of contributing something that matters, of using your unique talents and abilities to leave the world a little different than it would have been if you had never existed. He tells of a doctor who came to him in deep depression after his wife died, unable to find a reason to go on living. Frankl simply asked him, "What would have happened if you had died first and she had been widowed?" The doctor immediately replied that it would have been terrible for her, that she would have suffered immensely. Then Frankl said, "You see, by surviving her, you spared her that suffering. You are carrying this grief in her place, and that has profound meaning." The doctor left the office transformed, because he now saw his suffering not as meaningless absurdity, but as a sacrifice that had purpose, as an answer to the question life was posing to him at that moment. The second path to meaning is through the experiences we have and the genuine encounters we share with other people, through the capacity to love and to appreciate beauty. Frankl describes moments in Auschwitz where prisoners were forced to march for miles in the brutal cold before dawn, and he would look at the sky beginning to lighten, at the distant mountains tinged pink by the rising sun, and in those brief moments of contemplating beauty, he felt something within him that the Nazis couldn't destroy, a human capacity to transcend circumstances through the genuine appreciation of something beautiful or meaningful. He also speaks about how he thought of his wife during these moments, without even knowing if she was still alive, but the experience of loving her, of carrying that image of her within him, was in itself a source of meaning that no external deprivation could erase. And this leads us to understand something radical about love from a Franklian perspective. Loving another person isn't primarily about what you get from them. It's not about how they make you feel or what they can offer your life. But it's about the capacity to recognize the unique, irreplaceable value of that person. To see their deepest potential, even when they don't see it themselves. To be committed to their growth regardless of what it means for you. The third path, and perhaps the most unsettling and transformative, is through the attitude we adopt in the face of inevitable suffering. Frankl makes a crucial distinction between necessary suffering and unnecessary suffering. There is much suffering in our lives that is unnecessary, created by our own neuroses, our unrealistic expectations, our refusal to accept reality. And this kind of suffering should be eliminated through practical changes and psychological growth. But there is also suffering that is inevitable. Situations we cannot change no matter how hard we try, losses we cannot recover, limitations we cannot transcend. And in the face of this kind of suffering, the only freedom we have left is the freedom to choose our attitude. This is the last of human freedoms, as Frankl called it, the capacity to choose how we will position ourselves in the face of what we cannot avoid. In the concentration camps, he observed that some prisoners, even in the most degrading conditions, found ways to maintain their human dignity, to share their last crust of bread with another prisoner who needed it more, to offer words of encouragement when they themselves were on the brink of despair. These people proved that even when everything is taken from you, when you have no control over your external circumstances, you still have the capacity to choose what kind of person you will be in the face of it. And that choice, that inner freedom that no one can take from you unless you voluntarily give it away, is where your most essential humanity resides. But here, Frankl confronts us with an uncomfortable truth most people spend their whole lives avoiding. You are absolutely responsible for finding meaning in your own life. There's no one else who can do it for you, no guru who can hand you a ready-made purpose, no belief system that can substitute your personal responsibility to answer the specific questions your unique life is asking you. This existential responsibility is terrifying for many because it means you can no longer blame your circumstances, your upbringing, your genetics, society, or anything else external for the lack of meaning in your life. Frankl describes what he calls neugenic neuroses, psychological disturbances that don't stem from psychological conflicts or chemical imbalances, but rather from the frustration of the will to meaning, from the existential vacuum that arises when people can't find enough purpose to justify their existence. In contemporary society, where basic survival needs are largely met for many, these neugenic neuroses are becoming increasingly prevalent. People turn to addictions, endless distractions, compulsive consumerism, not because they have classic psychological problems, but because they're trying to fill a meaning void that these activities can never satisfy. It's like trying to quench hunger by eating cardboard. You can fill your stomach, but the essential nutrition never arrives. The noetic dimension of human existence, central to Frankl's thought, refers to the uniquely human capacity to seek and create meaning, to ask questions about life's purpose, to transcend biological and psychological determinisms through conscious choice. Animals live entirely governed by instincts and conditioning. Their lives are dictated by forces they cannot question or transcend. Even reductionist psychological theories treat humans essentially as more complex animals, governed by unconscious drives or environmental conditioning. But Frankl insists there's a dimension of human experience that can't be reduced to biology or psychology, a spiritual dimension in the non-religious sense of the word, where our capacity for self-distancing and self-transcendence resides. Self-distancing means you can detach yourself from your own thoughts and feelings, observe them from the outside, not be completely identified with them. When you're feeling anxious and can say, "I'm having anxious thoughts," instead of just, "I am anxious," you're exercising self-distancing. Self-transcendence means you can go beyond yourself, can dedicate yourself to something or someone larger than your own immediate interests, can find meaning precisely by forgetting yourself in favor of a cause or another person. These capacities for self-distancing and self-transcendence form the basis of the therapeutic techniques Frankl developed, particularly paradoxical intention and de-reflection. Paradoxical intention is used primarily for anticipatory anxieties and phobias, where the fear of something happening ends up provoking exactly what one fears. For example, someone terrified of trembling in public becomes so anxious about the possibility of trembling that this anxiety causes the tremor, confirming and reinforcing the original fear. Frankl instructs these individuals to intentionally try to make happen what they fear, to deliberately try to tremble as much as possible. This paradoxical inversion breaks the vicious cycle because it introduces a dose of humor and distance from the symptom. You can't simultaneously be genuinely terrified of something and intentionally try to make it happen. De-reflection works similarly, but is applied mainly to sexual issues and insomnia, situations where hyper-focus on the goal actually prevents it from being achieved. The harder you try to force sleep, the more awake you become. The more a man obsesses over his sexual performance, the more difficulty he has. Dereflection teaches the person to shift attention away from themselves and the immediate goal, focusing on something external, allowing the body to naturally do what the anxious mind was preventing. But back to the central question, Frankl forces us to confront a fundamental choice that determines the entire trajectory of our existence. Are we going to live seeking to minimize discomfort and maximize pleasure? Or are we going to live seeking to respond adequately to the specific demands our unique situation presents? The first option inevitably leads to existential emptiness, because pleasure by its very nature is ephemeral and needs constant renewal, creating an endless cycle of seeking that's never fully satisfied. Each pleasure attained soon loses its shine, requiring bigger or different pleasures to produce the same sensation. And eventually, you find yourself trapped in a race where you have to run faster and faster just to stay in the same emotional place. The second option, living in pursuit of meaning, has a completely different quality. When you are genuinely dedicated to something that matters deeply, when you are responding to a calling you feel is uniquely yours, the difficulties and discomforts of the path don't shatter you because they are part of something larger. They have a purpose within the broader narrative of your life. Frankl isn't promising a meaningful life will be easy or comfortable. Quite the contrary. He's saying a meaningful life often requires considerable sacrifice and effort. But these sacrifices are bearable and even enriching when they are in service of something that genuinely matters to you. If these ideas are resonating with something deep within you, if you feel like you're finally hearing someone who understands that hunger for genuine meaning that no external achievement has ever satisfied, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here, we don't offer quick fixes or empty promises, but we explore the thought of Viktor Frankl and other philosophers who take the human search for authentic meaning seriously, week after week. This is a space for people brave enough to question the easy answers, to face the existential void instead of running from it, to build a life that is truly theirs instead of just following pre-written scripts. You don't have to walk this journey alone. Hit that subscribe button and join this community of genuine seekers. Frankl also warns us about the dangers of conformity and totalitarianism as responses to existential emptiness. When people can't find meaning on their own, when the burden of freedom becomes too heavy, they often seek to escape it through two main avenues. Conformity means simply doing what everyone else is doing, following societal norms without question, living a conventional life even if it doesn't resonate with your deepest aspirations. You accept the goals society deems important, marriage, career, consumerism, status, and pursue them because everyone else is, not because you genuinely chose those values after careful reflection. Totalitarianism, on the other hand, means doing what others tell you to do, handing over your freedom and responsibility to an external authority, be it a political leader, a rigid ideology, or even a spiritual guru promising all the answers. Both routes offer temporary relief from existential anxiety because they eliminate the need to choose. But this relief comes at the cost of your essential humanity, at the cost of your ability to live an authentic, self-directed life. The question of the meaning of suffering deserves even deeper attention because it's where many people stumble when trying to apply Frankl's ideas to their lives. It's crucial to understand that Frankl isn't glorifying suffering. He's not saying you should seek out hardship or that the more you suffer, the more meaningful your life becomes. That would be masochism disguised as philosophy. What Frankl is saying is far more subtle and powerful. When suffering is unavoidable, when you've done everything you can to change or avoid it, but it still persists, then the only question left is how you will respond to it. You can respond by becoming bitter, cynical, withdrawn, blaming the world or yourself, giving up on growing or contributing because your circumstances aren't ideal. Or you can respond by using that suffering as an opportunity to demonstrate the best of human nature, to develop character strengths that only emerge under pressure, to create meaning precisely where it seems to be absent. He tells of a young woman dying of a terminal illness who was initially in absolute despair, feeling her life was being wasted, that she'd accomplished nothing significant. But through conversations with Frankel, she began to realize that the way she was facing her death, the dignity and courage she was demonstrating, was inspiring other patients in the hospital, offering a model for how to die with one's humanity intact. Her life didn't need to be long or filled with external achievements to have profound meaning. She was creating meaning through the way she was responding to a situation she couldn't change. This understanding has radical implications for how we deal with our own limitations and imperfections. We live in a culture obsessed with self-improvement, constantly bombarded with messages about how we can become better, more productive, happier versions of ourselves. And while personal growth is valuable, this obsession often keeps us trapped in a cycle of perpetual dissatisfaction, always focusing on what's wrong with us, what needs fixing, the gap between who we are and who we should be. Frankel invites us to a radically different stance. Instead of obsessively focusing on correcting your flaws, dedicate yourself to responding to the concrete demands your present situation is making on you. Don't wait until you're perfect to start living meaningfully. Don't postpone valuable contributions because you don't yet feel qualified enough. Use exactly who you are right now, with all your imperfections and limitations, to answer the specific questions that only you in your unique situation can answer. There is something only you can do, some contribution only you can offer, some response only you can give. And delaying that until you feel fully prepared is to waste the unique opportunity your life represents. The tragedy of human existence, according to Frankel, lies in the transient nature of life, in the fact that every moment lived immediately becomes an irreversible past. But he transforms this tragedy into something unexpectedly hopeful by showing us that while the future is uncertain and the present is fleeting, the past is indestructible. Everything you have lived authentically, everything you have created, all the moments of genuine love you have experienced, all the times you have courageously responded to unavoidable suffering, all of it is permanently etched into reality, secured forever in the past. Nothing can undo the fact that you existed in this way, that you brought these meanings into being. This perspective completely transforms how we view aging and death. Instead of seeing old age as a progressive loss of possibilities, as a gradual narrowing of what we can still do, Frankel invites us to see it as an ever-growing accumulation of permanent achievements, a fuller and fuller barn of meanings we have harvested during our journey. An older person shouldn't envy the young for all the possibilities still stretching before them, but should find deep satisfaction in all the realities they have already transformed from possibilities into actualities through the choices they've made. This vision also radically transforms how we think about regret. Many people carry regrets like open wounds, constantly revisiting past choices and imagining how their lives might have been different had they chosen otherwise. But Frankel suggests that regret only makes sense to the extent that it motivates us to make different choices going forward. You can't change the past, but you can change how you relate to it. Instead of getting stuck in laments over lost opportunities, acknowledge the meaning you did create with the choices you made, even if they weren't the ideal choices. Every choice you make closes certain doors, but opens others, eliminates some possibilities, but actualizes others. The question isn't whether you made the perfect choices. The question is whether you are living responsibly now, responding to the present demands of your current situation with the awareness and authenticity you possess at this moment. But perhaps the most radical inversion Frankel proposes is about the very question of the meaning of life. Most people search for a universal meaning, an answer that applies to everyone in every situation, a cosmic purpose that explains why existence in general exists. And when they don't find this universal answer, they fall into nihilism, concluding that if there's no transcendent meaning, then everything is absurd and arbitrary. Frankel argues that this search for a universal meaning is fundamentally misguided because it confuses the nature of meaning. Meaning isn't something that exists independently of concrete situations. It's not an abstract truth floating in some platonic realm waiting to be discovered. Meaning always emerges from specific situations, unique contexts, unrepeatable combinations of circumstances, capabilities, and opportunities. The relevant question is never what is the meaning of life in general, but what is the meaning of this specific situation, this particular phase of my life, this unique moment that won't come again. And this question has a different answer for each person and for each situation, requiring you to pay careful attention to the specific demands your life is making of you right now, not in the abstract, but concretely today. This understanding should produce both profound humility and tremendous responsibility. Humility because you can't simply copy the meaning someone else has found. You can't follow a ready-made formula that worked for others. The path that led another person to a meaningful life might be completely unsuitable for you, because your circumstances, talents, and opportunities are unique. But also tremendous responsibility, because this means you can't hide behind pre-packaged answers. You can't just do what you're told or follow what's trending. You need to exercise your own judgment, make your own choices, and take responsibility for the consequences. And this responsibility is terrifying for many people precisely because it means you might get it wrong. You might make choices that later turn out to be mistakes. You might waste unique opportunities that won't return. But Frankl would insist that this possibility of error doesn't absolve you of the responsibility to choose, and that living authentically means accepting this responsibility, even knowing you have no guarantees, even knowing you might regret your choices, even knowing the consequences of your decisions are real and irreversible. So here we are, back to that feeling of wasting life we started with, but now equipped with a completely different understanding of what that means and what to do about it. You're not wasting your life when you fail to achieve external success, not when your circumstances are difficult or limited, not when you're not constantly happy or comfortable. You are wasting your life when you avoid the responsibility of answering the specific questions that only your unique situation is posing, when you chase after pleasures and distractions instead of genuine meaning, when you surrender your freedom to conformity or external authorities instead of exercising your uniquely human capacity for self-determination. And the solution isn't some grand dramatic gesture, some radical transformation that completely reorganizes your life overnight. The solution is to start exactly where you are, with the limitations you have, responding today to the concrete demands that today presents you with. Is there someone in your life who needs you right now? Is there a talent you can develop and put to service for something bigger than yourself? Is there some unavoidable suffering you're facing that you can transform through the attitude you choose to adopt towards it? These aren't abstract or theoretical questions. They are practical questions that demand practical answers, and you answer them not with words but with concrete actions, with the choices you make every day about how to use your time, your energy, your attention. If you've made it this far in this video, you're exactly the kind of person this channel is for. Someone who isn't satisfied with superficial answers, who isn't afraid to confront deep questions about the meaning of existence, who is willing to take responsibility for their own life, instead of blaming circumstances or waiting for someone to hand them a ready-made purpose. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell to get new content every week that will help you dive deeper into these ideas, discover other thinkers who take the search for authentic meaning seriously, and become part of a community of people who also refuse to live on autopilot. And in the comments, share what insight impacted you the most in this video. What idea from Frankl is resonating most strongly with you right now? Your reflection might illuminate the path for someone else grappling with the same questions. See you in the next video. And remember, your life is asking you specific questions right now, and only you can answer them through the choices you make today.